I remember as I was starting to eat, I started to shake, and I'm like, you're 4 years old, you don't know what's going on,
Right.
and I kind of composed myself, got myself back together, and I was getting ready to start eating again, and I went into a full seizure.
Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Y'all already know what time it is. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. Whenever you are listening to this episode, I just want to come by and say hello and welcome to Stories of Hope podcast. Now, I know I said it, Happy Tuesday, and for a lot of y'all, it's Taco Tuesday. Ooh, ooh. If you haven't realized, that's my favorite part by now. Okay. But here at Mid South Transplant Foundation, we call it Tell Your Story Tuesdays. Now, before we get started, I would like to introduce myself. So if this is your first time tuning in, welcome, welcome. I'm happy to have you with us today. And hello, my name is ARTavius VZ, and I am your host and the digital communications coordinator here at Mid South Transplant Foundation. Now, here at Stories of Hope podcast, I interview and share personal stories of patients, recipients, donor families, and with the goal of spreading awareness, giving hope, and encouraging others to becoming an organ and tissue registered donor. All right. So a couple fun facts about me, real quick, is I'm a 16-year post-kidney transplant recipient, and I am the author of Becoming a Living Testimony: My Journey Through Kidney Disease and How It Blessed My Life. Okay. So are y'all ready for today's show? Now, I'm always excited to hear somebody's story. So I'm not going to hold you any longer. Without any further ado, we have a dialysis patient in the house today. And I cannot wait for you guys to hear his story. So could you help me welcome Mr. Phillip Jones Jr. What's going on, Phillip? How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Great. So before we get started, could you do me a favor and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you before we get into your story.
My name is Phillip Jones. I live in Los Angeles, California. I am a former transplant recipient, currently on dialysis for the past almost 12 years now, waiting on a kidney. Um, I'm a theater arts major, and I'll get into the rest of that stuff when I tell my story. I'm not going to bore everybody too long with the
Right.
introduction. So,
All right. So, with that being said, you have the floor. Tell us your story.
thank you. Thank you. So at the age of 4 years old is when my journey started. I remember, I well, this part I don't remember, it's the hospitalization, but the original situation that started everything was strep throat, caught strep throat from my cousin who actually had it, and because I was around my family a lot at that time, so um, after I gotten sick, which was called post-strep, which is the reason why my kidneys failed. So they did a biopsy and figured out everything. That my kidney function was failing and everything, and so um, at that time, I remember, I was going to school. My mom came and picked me up, and I remember she said, "I didn't know who you were because you were so swollen." And I'm like, well, maybe you need to go to the hospital and figure out something because you're supposed to know your kid, even
Right.
if you look disfigured or something, you're supposed to know what your son looks like, right?
Right.
So that happened, and also at the age of 4, when everything was going on, I remember at the time I was living with my grandpa. I was going between my mom and my dad because at the time they were divorced. They just got divorced a couple years earlier, and so I was at my grandparents' house, and we were doing our normal schedule. Eating breakfast in the morning in the den area, And those crazy nonsense things that your parents tell you, stop staring at the TV, y'all gonna go cross-eyed and all that stuff. So
Uh-huh.
of course at that time I'm 4, I don't understand that is nonsense, right? So
Mm.
I remember I caught myself, I was actually staring at the TV as I was eating. Now my grandparents, were I don't play no games type grandparents. I wasn't even thinking about the fact of my eyes being cross-eyed, but for a split second, then I thought, let me start eating before one of these grandparents backhand me real give me
Right.
food, right? So I remember as I was starting to eat,
Hmm.
I started to shake, and I'm like, you're 4 years old, you don't know what's going on,
Right.
and I kind of composed myself, got myself back together, and I was getting ready to start eating again, and I went into a full seizure.
Mm.
4 years old, sitting at home in the living room, went into a full seizure. My grandfather picked me up and took me to the living room area. They called my dad to come get me, and so he took me to Children's Hospital of LA. And I remember I was fine until I got there. When I got there, I jumped out the truck. I went into another one,
Mm.
right? After that, it stopped by the time we had gotten to the desk. But by the time the doctor had gotten there to the desk to greet us, I went to another one.
Mm.
And so that was what actually helped the doctors kind of figure out what was wrong. Was because they were able to see the type of seizures. And before I didn't understand that
Mhm.
till I witnessed a friend of mine's son with seizures in the hospital. And I was like, okay, so that's some real stuff, is that doctors can figure out what you're dealing with based off of what kind of seizures you have.
Right.
So fast forward, because between 4 and 16 years old, I was at 30% kidney function. Um, didn't, only thing I had to do is take, like 2 medications, went to the doctor once a month, like every normal kidney patient, um, got to 16 years old, and I went for one of those regular checkup appointments. And I remember my doctor said, it's about that time. Your functioning is drastically falling.
Mm.
So it's transplant time. You need to go on dialysis. So he transferred me to a different Kaiser facility, which is like the Hollywood area, which is where I started doing peritoneal dialysis. Had the procedure for that and everything. And so at 16 years old, it was the summer going into my senior year of high school.
Mm.
And I tried to keep it to myself while in school, right? So it was like, I didn't want to go through school with people, you know, uh, saying, "Oh, Philip sick, Philip sick." I wanted them to know Philip for who Philip is, not so much about me being a patient. So I kept that from pretty much 99% of the school, you know, and that would not just high school, that's elementary, middle school, everything
Mhm.
that I was dealing with kidney disease. So certain people ended up finding out because even though I was on dialysis, I still played football my senior year.
Really?
Yeah, I still played football my senior year, and that seems to be the shocking point to this whole thing.
Yes, because
And
that
so,
just kind of slick made me mad because I was on dialysis while I was in high school, and they wouldn't even let me run track, and they let you play football.
well, you about to be mad because when I started the second, so I got through the first semester of school, right? And my whole thing was, let me make it past the second semester, and then let me get my transplant, because I didn't want to have to worry about classes and having to go back and stuff like that. So I ended up February 2007. I got my call, right, so it was a Sunday, and when you get the call, as you know, it's a
the
very emotional
the call,
situation.
right? Mm-hmm.
Shout outs to Shane Blanchard. You just got the call Sunday, had his transplant yesterday. And for me, I remember when they said, "Hey, we need you to come down here. We got a kidney for you." And I said, exactly how long do you need me? How fast do you need me to get there?
Mm-hmm.
Now, everybody else is probably thinking like, now
Right.
I'm thinking, give me about 2 hours because if I tell my father that I need to get there now, we probably gonna run about 50 red lights and possibly cause about 3 crashes on the way there because he's gonna drive like he's a NASCAR racer. So,
Right.
um,
He gonna get you
I
there.
was like, we need to get there and get there safely.
Right.
Um, so we get there, and one of the coolest things happened, and I mention this because it's important for a lot of pediatric patients as well. People who need to understand pediatric patients is that I didn't know anybody with kidney disease when I grew up,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
right? So, get to 17 years old and going in for a transplant, and I meet the first person, my first person with kidney disease, and he happens to be the person that was getting the other kidney from the person I was getting mine from.
Mm.
He was about 10, 11 years old, but he was a real cool, high spirited young man. I'm sitting, I'm going in, I'm like, I'm nervous, I'm not nervous. I'm nervous because I'm like, surgery, in general. I've
Right.
only
Right.
had uh, one surgery my whole life, and well, two. One when I was 4, we did the biopsy on my kidney, and then when they put the peritoneal dialysis catheter in. So I'm like, I don't know what's going on, and he was just like, man, I'm trying to get my life back. I'm like, bro, you 10. What like what is
What
going
life
on
you got
right now?
at
This depression,
10?
So,
Right.
but he was a real cool young man.
Right.
So I remember I woke nurse and I told her, I said, "Can you come here for a second?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Why he still asleep?" And she was like, "What do you mean?" I said, "We went on at the same time." I said, "Is he okay?" She said, "Oh yeah, he'll be up in a minute." And because I was like, looking, I'm going, I know he's not dead. I'm
Right.
like, I'm
Right.
like,
Hold
if he,
up.
I said that's not going to be too good for my psyche if he dead
Right.
laying across from me like that all
Right.
willy nilly.
Be
Um,
traumatized.
right, exactly. So, like I said, 17, got my transplant. Did my recovery and everything, and went back to school summer of 2007 because I wasn't going to go to adult school. I was going to finish high school the way I went in. So, um, tried to play football again right after my
Mm-hmm.
transplant, and they wouldn't give me the hardship. So I said, all right, I got to figure something out because I'm not gonna just stand around here and do nothing. I need to find a way to get active and keep myself in shape with this kidney. So I ran cross country. Ran cross country that semester, and then I ran track the next semester. And graduated class 2008, did prom and all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which was a good time. I felt good, even though I had to do it after my time. I was still okay with it because my whole thing was I fought too much to get to this point, so
Mm-hmm.
I was going to do it no matter what. So, um, you know, did that. 2008, I went to the Transplant Games of America. Well, at that time, it was called the U.S. Transplant Game,
Right. All
which
right.
was
I
in
didn't know you
Pittsburgh.
went.
Hmm?
I didn't know you went to the transplant games. I went in 16 and 18.
Yeah, I
2016
went
and
in
18.
18 as well. So I was
Really? I don't remember seeing you. You
it was
must
a
run
lot of
running
people.
track.
It was a lot of people. It
It
was a lot of
was. It
people.
was.
'Cause I met a lot of people on Facebook, and I'm like, "You were there? You were there?" I'm like, "I don't see you. Where were you at?" So, and I was pretty much everywhere. I think that was the only place I didn't go was track. But
Yeah,
um,
that's like my domain. I was
2008,
almost
it was mine.
okay.
I came out with 2 medals that year.
All right.
Um, but went to Pittsburgh, right, and um, did bowling, basketball, and track and field, right. So
Okay.
um, after we got done with the bowling tournament, um, I had a hurt knee. My right knee was hurt. Didn't know what the issue was. I just knew it was hurting. It was swollen. But I'm an athlete and I pushed through things. So the next day I did track, right?
Mm.
Still ran on it. Did long jump, 4x1, 100, and still did my events. Did bowling the next day and everything. And I remember I was at the airport coming home and I said, and I thought I'm going to be on a 4 hour flight going from Pittsburgh to LA. I said, this is going to hurt a lot. Um, so I'm looking all over the place with Tylenol. First off, this is my second time ever in an airport for me to take a flight. Right, the first time was going to Pittsburgh.
Right.
So I don't know how airports work. I don't know how announcements work. I don't know how none of this goes. Right, so I'm trying to minimize all mistakes that can happen.
Right. Was you there by yourself?
I was not. I was with my
Okay.
team, but I wouldn't about to say, "Hey, get up and go to the store
Yeah,
with me."
right.
So I I remember asking everybody. Everybody around me were uh liver patients or heart transplant patients.
Okay.
Right? It was not one kidney patient on my team by me at the airport going home.
Mhm.
So um I remember asking everybody, tell you, Tylenol. It was like, no, I don't tell that Motrin. And I'm like, I don't really like taking Motrin, but I'm not trying to sit on this flight for 4 hours with my knee like this. So
Mhm.
unfortunately, I took the Motrin.
Mm.
Anybody that has dealt with kidney transplant, they know that's the one you don't take.
That's that is what you don't take. I miss mine took like ibuprofen. Don't
So
do it.
they but here's the thing, and I gotta know this part, and I don't want to make it seem like I'm a victim or anything, but
Mhm.
it's more or less of a FYI for healthcare professionals. Make
Mhm.
sure you cover your bases with your patients, because had my bases been covered in that situation,
You would
I
have been
would have
better.
just said, let me go ahead and get lost at this airport and go find me some Tylenol,
Mhm.
right? But I didn't know, and that's just something that I have to deal with, going forward, right?
Yeah.
So it is what it is. So uh, to skip some years, the Motrin is what caused my kidney to reject.
Mm.
3 years later, in 2010, my kidney reject August 2010.
Mm.
Um, 2000 and that was just kind of the start of my horrific story, horror story that I've been living the past 11 years. But so to kind of speed it up a little bit, that's the next month, September of 2010, I had another seizure, another big
Mm.
seizure. I ended up in the hospital for about 2 weeks, um, and then got out, thought everything was good. Till about 2 weeks later, I had this horrible headache. Now, mind you, when I had my seizure, that was how my day started as well, was a bad headache. So
Mhm.
that was the first thing I was thinking. I'm like, let me go ahead and go to the hospital now. It's the same headache. Let me
Mhm.
try to get ahead of this thing before anything happened.
Right.
Well, I would have taken that any day over what I got. So I remember they did, the whole, CT scan and everything, all those tests that they normally do.
Mhm.
And I remember the physician's assistant came back and said, you have a subdural hematoma
Mm.
in your brain, and we need to do emergency brain surgery like as soon as possible. That's when I saw my whole world go upside down.
Right.
Because my grandfather had just had brain surgery about 4 or 5 years prior to that. And so I'm thinking about everything that he went through. Now, granted, there are different types of brain surgeries where it's
Right.
not so drastic, and then there's major ones and things of that nature. So,
Uh-huh.
um, dealt with that. Was in the hospital for about a month, and then from then to about 2016, I dealt with really bad headaches all the time. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so even while going through all this stuff between 2010 and 2013, I was going to hemodialysis, but I had so many complications with that because I had to get my port changed about 5 times because
Oh my
the
God.
cause of my brain bleed was heparin.
Mm.
So they couldn't put heparin in my line. And whoever thought of this didn't become a genius until about 3 months before I stopped doing hemodialysis when they realized we don't have to put, heparin all the way through. We can just put it just in the line so it doesn't clot. I'm like, y'all just thought about this? I'm
This is
like,
a perfect
oh,
time.
right, you are. Give this person an award. This is great. So, uh, 2013 went to peritoneal dialysis, which I've been on since then, and 2017, found my way back in school. Um, Originally was going back to school to become a teacher, so I started off real slow in my classes. I was taking one class here, one class there, one class
Right.
here, just to get myself back into the groove
Right.
of
Get back.
things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I found out that the theater program that we had was kind of back to where it normally was. When I first started at that school, when I graduated, I was in theater then,
Hmm.
and it was winning awards and going to Detroit at this play, doing this and doing that.
Right.
And I remember this guy came up in good friend Dion came up in front of our class and was saying all this great stuff about the program, and I'm like, that may be what I need to do because I had to. The program that I was in to become a teacher wasn't there anymore because that advisor wasn't there anymore.
Right.
So I had to figure something out, right? I'm like,
Hmm.
I gotta figure something out here. I'm not just here to show up just to show up and say hi and go home. So
Right.
um, we got back in theater, performed 2018, 2020, 2021. We won. Our theater program has won awards from the Kennedy Center since 2017. Um, and we treat ourselves like professionals, right?
Right.
So um, that's a major part of my life.
Hmm.
It gives me reason to keep striving, keep pushing, just like with a second chance. It gives me a reason to not lay down and not settle and get to the point where I'm just like
Just
well, if
give
it
in.
happens, it happens, right?
Right.
So
Right.
um, real quick story about my theater family is that we went to Arizona in
Okay.
2018, right?
Hmm.
Um, for the regional competition, and I was doing peritoneal dialysis at that time, and I said, you know what? I said I'm not going to take this machine with me because that can be a lot on somebody that's not used to that, right? So I took manual bags instead because then that way I can go into the bathroom, do what I got to do early in the morning, at night when they usually took a 50-year walk to the store or something like that. I got time to do what I got to do and be done.
Hmm.
So I timed it perfectly between we were there for about 5 days. Those first 4 days, timing was fine. There was no problems or anything like that. Everything got thrown off on the last day for me, right? So the last day was when we had our competition, and I remember I had to get up early in the morning. Now normally I didn't do my first batch till like 8:30,
Okay.
before I'm going to a workshop or something, and I had to do it at like 6:30 or 7 that day, which threw everything completely off, right? So
Hmm.
originally the schedule was get up, rehearse for 6 billion years before the competition, do the competition, get a critique, come home. Which I'd have been fine if we'd have been able to follow that schedule. Everything went downhill for me when after our competition, we just everything got switched around. So I remember as we were sitting, they were sitting at the sitting inside the restaurant, and I was sitting in the car because I couldn't breathe. I felt like crap, and I remember I told I said leave the car on because I need air. So at first I'm sitting there, I'm fine. I was even able to fall asleep. I'm like, if I can sleep till I get home, I'm good. So I remember we left to come home, and we stopped at a McDonald's. It was probably about midway.
Okay.
And I remember our director JP looked at me and said, "Phil, you all right?" Because he knew my whole situation. He had to know. So he was like, "Phil, you okay?" I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And about 2 minutes later, I was like, "Nah,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna make it home." So there's a funny story within this horrible story. Um, so when he got back in the van, he looks up nurse emergency room, and when you think iPhones and everything, you like, okay, cool. I'm gonna get this correct information, get to where I gotta go. When we got to where, because I think we was actually on Google Maps, but when we got to where it sent us, there was nothing there. Now I'm scared
Right.
because I'm like, I don't know what can happen between the time that we just wasted to get to nowhere and me getting to an actual hospital. So we found another one and got there. The bad part about that is we ended up in probably the oldest city in California because this place still had square TVs. It didn't even have the emergency room, like normal emergency room, you're in rooms. Nah,
Right.
they had curtains separating beds.
They just had one big room that had the curtain to separate everything.
And then the doctor was like 80 some years old. I'm like, he's got to be the only person that's ever worked here because this is not good. Y'all need to update some stuff around here. So ended up in the hospital for a while with that. Um, and the story goes on from there, but um, I'm not gonna keep it. So that's pretty much the majority of it. Like I said, still doing theater, getting ready for some stuff now. Started a second chance this year in March, which has been great. And working with the Why Not Foundation for the past 2 years has been awesome. Helping
Hey,
pediatric patients,
that.
so that's pretty much my story, man. I definitely appreciate you giving me the time to tell it.
Yes, and we definitely got more to talk about. But before we get into that, we're gonna take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
I give hope, I give life, I give me. Join us and give life.
4 years ago, someone gave me hope and gave me life by giving me a heart.
25 years ago, someone gave me hope and gave me life. I received a liver that saved my life.
I support organ and tissue donation because 4,000 people in the Mid-South need a life-saving organ.
I can give them hope. I can give them life. I can give me.
You can give life too.
Currently, 4,000 Mid-Southerners are in need of a life-saving transplant. Join Mid-South Transplant Foundation and give hope, give life.
Register to become an organ and tissue donor at midsouhtransplant.org.
All right, and we're back. We just finished hearing the amazing story from Mr. Phillip Jones Jr. I have a couple questions that I want to ask because I know listening to your story, first of all, thank you for sharing your story. You mentioned you was very young. You was very young when you was in high school. That is very similar to my story. You said you found out about 4 years old. You said
Yeah.
first, so I was
Mhm.
diagnosed at 3 years old. So mine was hereditary from my mom. Was yours hereditary, or where did yours come from?
No, it was the post strep from when I had
Okay.
strep throat
Yep. Yeah.
that caused
Okay.
everything to go, out of balance.
Right. Okay. Cool. So yeah. So I trust me, I get it when you're so young going through that, and when you say you was in high school. High school was one of the craziest times for me because trying to be cool with your friends and also trying to keep it a secret that you're on dialysis because, excuse me, teenagers, they would not understand what kidney disease is. All they would get from it is like disease, and they just gonna run with that. They ain't want to be your friends no more. Ain't gonna want to hang out. And being on dialysis, it's for me. I had mood swings. I was always tired. Didn't want to talk to nobody, and was just mad at the world. But you said you didn't have no one. You didn't know anyone who had kidney disease. For me, it was just in my family. It was just me and my mom. And my mom went through dialysis and everything, and she kind of coached me through the process of okay, so what this is, what you need to take this for, what you're gonna feel like after dialysis, what you're gonna feel like when you're on dialysis. So it's very important to have somebody who's been through that as far as going through dialysis or whatever part of your journey you're on, whether you got a transplant or you newly just had your transplant. And I call those people like your tribe. So it's always good to have those like-minded individuals who share the journey with you. Like I believe it makes the journey a lot easier when you have somebody who's been through that same situation versus going through that storm by yourself. Because the one up on it or the plus side to it is having the other person, you can see the other side of it versus just going through it by yourself and like, well, this is all I know. And a lot of people get discouraged just being the only one on that journey. And I can completely understand that. And that's why I believe it's super important for us as either patients or recipients to share our stories. Because even though we both, me and you may have went through dialysis, our journeys are completely different. So I would ask you, so what or why do you think us as either patients or recipients, why do you think it's so important for us to share our stories?
Because like we talked about earlier, everybody's story is unique, right? It's
Yeah,
different. Like you said, we might be, on dialysis or had a transplant, but like I mentioned before, we all got there a different way,
right.
right? Everybody's journey and the way that they got to a transplant or got to dialysis um, is not the same.
Hmm.
I always say, we all took different streets and avenues to get to our destination.
Right.
Nobody's is the same. We might have some, specks of similarities, maybe a hospitalization because of XYZ reason,
Hmm.
taking medications because of XYZ reason, things like that. But to line it up side by side, it will never be the same story for anybody. Everybody's is different, completely different. And it's unique and great in their own way. So
Yeah.
that is definitely important.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing I had wanted to ask, I completely agree. Since now that you're on dialysis, what, because I can only imagine going back on dialysis and what that would be like for me after having a transplant. So of course that deals with a lot of mental health, and it can definitely, mess with your head a little bit. So what advice would you give to a person on dialysis, and what could you say to kind of help motivate them or encourage them on their journey while they're still on dialysis?
Well, one is to kind of go back on what you were saying. Having a tribe, a family, people that you can confide in and talk to, because sometimes you get in those situations where you start wondering, When you have that transition, like me, going from transplant to dialysis, right? Have somebody that you can talk to, because you're gonna need it sometimes. Like you were saying, you're pissed off, you're angry, you don't want to do it in the first place. It's a little easier being on peritoneal dialysis because you still kind of have your life.
Yeah.
You can still travel if you need to. You can still go to work. Things of that nature. Being on hemo is a lot more stressful because
Yeah.
you literally can't do anything.
Right. You're strapped to the
Um,
machine and you're there.
right. 3 days a week, you on that machine for 4, 5, 6 hours.
Yeah.
And it can get irritating. I'm not gonna lie, I was super irritated when I first started hemodialysis. But um, keep those people around you that can keep you high in spirits, because you're gonna need it.
Yeah.
You're gonna need to have that mindset. Your mindset is what carries you through something like this, whether it's heart, liver, kidney, lungs, anything like that, any life-threatening illness. Your mindset and the way that you are thinking and going about your life is what's going to get you to come through this. So make sure you have a good mindset.
Yeah.
Whether you have to bring in yoga in your life or meditation, wellness is important. Making sure that you give yourselves no reason uh, to be doubtful is not the word, but kind of in that like lump, like
Yeah.
you just like sitting there like this all day. You don't want to get to that point,
And be
because
down on
that's when you
yourself.
start right down on yourself. That's when you start doubting yourself. You don't want to do your dialysis anymore. You start trying to figure why am I even doing this, and is it worth it, and stuff like that.
Right, right. And it's definitely like you said, it's a mindset. Like I believe if you can conquer it in the mind, you can conquer it in the physical. So you have to watch your self-talk. What are you saying to yourself? Having, like you said, having that tribe around. Who are you let pour into you during this time? Because this is a crucial time in your life where you're gonna spend a lot of hours by yourself, where it's just you and that machine. And that's why I think it's also important to really plan out your life. Now, I understand that in some cases, some people will not get organs or will not get a transplant, and that's okay. Even though, like for me, I was on hemodialysis and I was on a machine Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 hours, 3.5 hours every time. And what I had to understand is if I don't plan my life, dialysis would take over my life. So it's always important to have some type of goal that you want to do. And with me, I'm the type of person who's like, okay, what can I do with what I have? Because a person can easily be like, well, dialysis is my life. I'm always here. Last time I checked, we were on dialysis 3 days a week as far as hemodialysis. We on dialysis 3 days a week for 3.5 hours. Last time I checked, it's 7 days in a week. So what are you doing with those other 4 days? So the thing is, if you're going through dialysis, I understand when you get off, you be tired, you be sleepy, you in your little mood, don't want to talk to nobody, just want to go get you something to eat, drink some water, and take a little nap. But when you get up, what are you doing? If you really want to be successful, whatever that is to you, or just have a quote unquote normal life, and I don't even know what that is anymore, but you have to plan your life. What is it that you want to do? And you have to take the initiative to do those steps. Okay, today I'm do one thing a day and just work on it. It's not going to be easy because you're going against dialysis. So your body is not as strong as those of us who have transplants. But that's not an excuse for you to not go after your dreams. So for me, I don't believe in excuses. So you can miss me with all of that. So yeah, so I definitely love that. And to close it out, for those who are unsure about being a registered donor, what would you say to them?
That's funny because I asked that same question to my guest. So to kind of sum it up, for us to become recipients, we need donors,
Mhm.
which means that somebody has to take that chance to be able to save somebody's life. We need more of these people, and here's what I do want to add is that people think when you're asking to be a registered donor that you're saying, donate your kidney or your liver now while you're alive. Would that be great? Yes, but you can't use none of this stuff when you leave here. So just if nothing else, become a donor for after that time comes, because you can still save someone's life. It may not be now, it may not be 10 years from now, or however long it is that you're here on this earth, but you could definitely save a number of lives after the fact. So I try to just make sure that people know in general that we need donors, period. Again, what living donors would be great. It's a lot easier for somebody to take to a living donation, um, than to have to take in a cadaver. So if you could find it in your heart to become a living donor, awesome, great. If you could find it in your heart to become a donor in general and get that pink dot on the back of your license, then God bless you as well, because at the end of the day, you're still saving someone's life, and it's something that is greatly needed in this world. Are more donors to be able to save more lives. Is 100 and something thousand people on the transplant list, and I don't even know the number of people that are registered to be donors, and it's nowhere near close to that 100,000. So, um, if you can find it in your heart, and you have that influence on your family, talk to them as well. Get them to also register as a donor to be able to donate and save someone's life, because it's very important, and it's a very big need in this world. Um, to have donors to be able to save lives. So that's it.
All right. All right. And there you have it, guys. That is all of the time we have for this episode. Philip, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. I really hope your story reached someone. And with that being said, again, thank you again for being here. Now, for those of you who are watching us live on YouTube, don't forget to leave us a thumbs up and comment below. And of course, subscribe. Let us know what you think in the comment section below. And what did you take away from this episode? Now, for those of you who are listening on podcast platforms, be sure you subscribe so you can get every episode when we upload a new one. And leave us a 5-star rating and leave us a comment, a review. Let us know what you think about the podcast so far, or what was your big takeaway from this episode or whatever episode you listened to. Now, for those of you who are in the tri-state area, that is whether you're in Tennessee, Arkansas, or Mississippi, to register today, go to our website at www.midsouhtransplant.org. Or if you're in any of the other states, you can go to registerme.org, and that's information, and more information will be in the description or in the show notes where you can get that information. So with that being said, you guys, thank you so much for listening. I highly appreciate you guys and all the support you have shown this podcast. And before I go, I gotta tell you, no matter the opinions of others or circumstances you are facing in your life, always believe in yourself, because I know I believe in you. Until next time, you guys be blessed, take care, and I will see you next week for the next episode. Talk to you guys later. Bye.